After a long wait, Overwatch Champions Series is here. The start of a new era in Overwatch esports is right around the corner. In this exciting new era, we're going to be separated into a bunch of different regions with so many players and interesting teams all competing for the crown at the end of this year. In particular, today we're going to be taking a look at the first stage in Korea for Overwatch Champions Series, as their group stage is about to get underway later this week, March 1st. In today's video, we're diving deep into all things Overwatch Champions Series Korea/Asia to give you the scoop on what's going on, how it works, and some power rankings and a bit of a preview as to what I am expecting and how the landscape is looking over there for this first main tournament. Let's start with some general information and the format so you know how things are gonna go. So, like I said before, everything is starting up on March 1st in the group stage. It is going to be a round robin between all 9 of these teams, and it'll go until March 24th. From there, we'll take the number of teams that are in this competition from 9 down to 8, with the last place team getting eliminated from this event. From there, you'll have the 4 best teams automatically get to a single elimination bracket, while the bottom 4 will compete in a last chance qualifier, where 2 of them will join in that 6-team single elimination tournament, and the top 3 of them will all automatically go on to the main Asia event between the Korean representation, Japanese representation, and the Pacific teams, with the 4th place team having a chance to be a wildcard team. There's going to be a ton of matches, and it literally starts from the beginning of March until the beginning of April. It's an entire month jam-packed with epic Korean Overwatch, so buckle your seatbelt, we're in for quite the ride. All these matches in Korea will be streamed on the Overwatch Esports official YouTube and Twitch channels, so you have your preference of choice of where you want to watch on what platform, with some viewership incentives added in as well. That just about sums up how this all works, so let's dive straight into the heart of OWCS Korea. So the first noteworthy talking point when it comes to OWCS Korea, and honestly Asia in general, that I kind of want to go into before even talking about the players and the teams themselves, is that Asia typically works a lot differently than NA and an EU when it comes to playstyle and what is preferred to be played in any sort of composition. That's been no secret for many, many years, and I would expect the same thing to at least kind of be true, at least here at the start of OWCS Stage 1. We know that Korea in particular loves to practice and play dive. That's what they've been doing a lot of actually in some of the scrims I have seen, which is a lot different compared to NA and EU. Pro scrims have been popping over there, and a lot of it has been Ramatra, Lucio, Moira based, with some dive DPS in there as well sometimes, specifically a Tracer, sometimes Genji, and then you have Hitscan as well. It just seems like it's going to run differently in Asia. We're seeing Doomfist be practiced, Wrecking Ball's pretty strong right now. We know that Asia loves to play Winston, so you should expect this to be a lot more fast-paced than what we see in the Western regions. It's not to say that all teams will fall into this trap, because again, Ramatra, Moira, Lucio is very good, but there's probably going to be some disparities just knowing this region and the pride that some of these players have to match each other in the dive setup. But I am going to be of the mindset that it's better to rank these teams in general, as you never know when things can suddenly change for whatever reason, or maybe things end up a lot different than anticipated, so I am simply going to rank these teams based off of how much I like them. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? How flexible are they? How deep are they? And just to keep you guys on your toes, I'm going to go out of order on this list, starting with the teams that stand out the most and are pretty easy to rank. And if that's the case, there's no better place to start than with the clear-cut favorites in 90+% of everyone's opinions, aka Team Falcons. The Saudi-based organization has decided they wanted to take their talents to Asia and dominate the Overwatch world with a Korean super team. Proper Stalker, Smurf, Hanbin, Chio Fielder, plus Sir Majet as well makes for a very interesting core that doesn't have a lot of holes in their game. In most metas, this team is probably going to be one of the most relevant, if not the strongest team out of Asia. There is absolutely no reason this team shouldn't be competing at a top level to win it all this year. They have that kind of potential. They have a great mix of players on their hands. So we're just going to immediately put these guys as the #1 team in OWCS Korea Stage 1. I've said it before on this channel and I'll say it again. A team that has proper with help is absolutely terrifying to think of. He's been on some decent teams in his OWL career, but nothing compared to a roster like this. Giving him this kind of firepower next to him could do some absolutely insane things. Him and Stalker may seem like a strange combo on paper, but they're both so deep in terms of what they can play. They have crazy hero pools, a lot of upside, two players who at their best can literally be the best DPS players in the entire game, so I'm not going to be worried whatsoever about these guys figuring it out, especially in any kind of dive setup. It could be GG. I think a Stalker proper Tracer Genji would literally feed families. And the rest of it kind of just follows suit. Smurf Hanbin, we both know what those guys can do. Chio and Fielder have been dominating for years. Nothing but good things to say about this team. The weird oddball out is, of course, Sir Majed. He's mostly here just because, Team Falcons, Saudi organization, they needed to have some kind of Saudi player, and I think Majed is a pretty good fit if you want to go for one of the top talents. I don't know how much this guy's going to play. We've talked about it a lot, but he could actually end up being a decent secret weapon for this Falcons team depending on the meta. If the situation calls for it, he could come in over Fielder as he's a lot more of an aggressive player, more of the playmaking type of flex support, and that could be something that Falcons needs depending on the situation, and/or for a double flex meta. Team Falcons is like an A+ roster, doesn't really get much better than this. They're the favorites for sure, and I would be disappointed if they don't do well. Now we're going from the absolute top to the literal bottom. We're talking about Vesta Crew next, another team that sticks out like a sore thumb, but for all the opposite reasons of what I said about Team Falcons. It's no offense to Vesta Crew. They have some fun players, guys that have competed in Korean contenders for years now, but compared to all the other rosters we will see in this video, they just don't quite stack up. They're the underdog for sure, they have a lot to prove, that motivation could potentially come in handy, but I largely expect this team to be eliminated by the time we're at the end of the round robin, so I'm gonna go ahead and put Vesta Crew at the 9 spot in the rankings. But hold on, for the next team, we're not moving that far, we're talking about SBG, aka Sinprisa Gaming, a staple of the Korean scene the last couple of seasons, always maintaining relevance and sticking around. Gotta love this organization, and I think their team is pretty decent. It's not anything that is to write home about per se, but there's some likable players. You got the GOAT Milguru, everybody loved him in Overwatch League last year. Tuyu's been a solid tank for years. Lee Soo-min's getting another chance at this thing, and I'm a big fan of 8 as well, a solid upcoming DPS. There's a few issues with this team though. First and foremost, they technically were a last chance qualifier team. They didn't breeze through their specific tournament stage like a majority of the other teams we'll discuss in this video. They just barely made it through. It was a tough battle for them. They're a wildcard underdog for sure, and it's pretty easy to see why. Cool players on this team, yes, you definitely check off that box, but they don't necessarily have the star power either, just like with Vesta Crew, to truly compete at the top level against some very dangerous looking teams with some of the best players to ever play the game. But also, this team's success very much might depend on what the meta is. Right now, things could be okay for them. They've got a good ball player, they can play Diva as well, but if things were to change on a dime, I don't know how this team is going to hold up. I'm a little worried that their success is extremely meta dependent, but we'll have to see. Regardless, not a huge SBG fan, so I'm going to place them as the number 8 team on this list. Now this is where things start to get interesting. Next up, we have OWCS. A team that has some very interesting pieces leading the way with Lip, Chorong, and Shu as what should be a very deadly trio. A team of 2 champions plus arguably the best flex support in the game. That alone makes them very dangerous and obviously gives them a very high ceiling. Where everything starts to go into question will be with their other 3 remaining players, that being Hiseng, Junbin, and Max. 3 guys who were a bit disappointing during their first year in the Overwatch League last season. Some people have lost faith in them, and of course there's a question of if they can even compete at a top level and be super reliant for great teammates like this to prove that they truly are worthy of being one of the best in Korea. I think it's very understandable when you're this young and still haven't proven that much outside of contenders, but they're certainly worth giving another chance to. And I say that because they definitely have the upside. We saw what they once did in their careers. Obviously no OWL success, but on O2 they literally formed a dynasty. And after OWL ended, in that Flash Ops tournament, they were one of the best teams. These guys still have what it takes to be really good players. I think a fresh start could do all of them really good. We saw it happen with Heesang immediately when he went to Vancouver. Who's to say the same can't happen for Junbin and Max as well? With different coaching, a different system, maybe feeling a bit more comfortable with themselves, they might be able to elevate their play to what you're looking for with a team that has some really good players on it like this. There's going to be questions if Heesang can be reliant enough to be Lip's DPS partner, and if Junbin and Max can make the most of having Chorong and Shu as their backline. Definitely. But I think that just because of the potential they have, and knowing that they have great teammates like this to help lead the way, that they might be able to figure things out. It's not to say there's any guarantees there, but in a lot of scenarios, I suspect this team will play very well, and some of the new guys will make the most of this opportunity, while the old guys continue to play very well. They seem pretty well-rounded. Chorong and Shu might be the best support line in the entire event, honestly, maybe even in the entire world compared to everybody else. They can play anything under the sun and be elite on it for sure, if they really click together. Lip, I mean, at his peak, literally a grand finals MVP. I'm a little suspect of how he'll do in like a Tracer setup, let's say, but that's what Heesang is there for, to maybe help alleviate that and figure out some other plan to win. Just knowing his past and what he's accomplished, I'm sure he's going to figure it out. Heesang showed me in his OWL career and beforehand he can be a flexible player if needed, which is good for Lip. You can play around him. And then Junbin and Max, while they have something to prove, no doubt, they do kind of complement each other well, obviously, as they make up for what they lack in terms of hero pool. And now that they're not on the Shock and Krusty's crack pipe system, they can actually practice what they're good at and purely focus on that. But even then, no guarantees, as a lot of it is going to depend on their actual individual abilities and if they can show up and compete with these top tank players in this tournament. Regardless though, WAC seems like they could be one of the top teams in this tournament. On paper, they have one of the strongest rosters with an absolute ton of upside to go along with it. However, it seems that two things are going to be dependent on their level of success. One being the O2 players, and if they realize their potential, and two, maybe to a certain degree, the meta, as it seems like there could be some holes in their game, specifically like DPS and or tank. If something goes wrong, this team could crash and burn very easily, but in the end, I do believe they'll be in that upper echelon of teams, as they do have a lot of stable pieces to help make up for the question marks. 3 very reliable players that'll play consistently no matter what happens. So I think because of their overall upside, I'm going to place WAC at number 2. I like that little trio they've got going on there, and I think it'll take them far. Next up, we have Genesis, formerly known as Unemployer. This team has a very interesting mix of players, a big-time wildcard that some people are high on, and some people not so much. There's things to like about this team, things that we've actually seen work already in the Winter Flash Ops tournament. Decay, Choisewan, and Kellen played well together. This seems like a winning combination that can do well and can compete with the top guys. I mean, I'm a big fan of Decay and Choi together. I think these guys make sense. They work. Decay's flexible enough to play hit scan if needed. There's a lot of good there, and kind of like what I was saying with Proper and Stalker, in a Tracer Genji setup, these guys could put in the work. And with the tank line, I don't think it's that bad either. Kellen and Kalios don't dominate the scene or anything, but it's not horrible. In particular, I actually am a big fan of Kellen. He's grown on me a lot. He's shown a lot of steady progress in his career, despite being on an NYXL team that didn't always give him the resources to succeed. He showed me last year in particular, he can be a great solo tank, that hyperflex that you need. He has a lot of talent, he has a lot of potential, and with different resources and a different system, we could see this guy thrive. However, with all the upside that comes with this team, there is a downside that raises a lot of eyebrows on how far this team can really go. And that's with the backline. Teru in Maka is very questionable on paper. Teru is going to be playing yet another different position in his career, going from flex support to DPS, back to flex support, now on main support. Another new challenge for this guy, and I don't really know if he's main support material. I guess we're going to find out soon, but with how Lucio-centric things are right now, he's got a lot to prove. And with Maka, I mean, I'm willing to give the guy a chance. He made OWL for a reason. Florida picked him up for a reason. There is something there, no doubt about it. But can he be relied on as a top-level carry to compete with the likes of Fielder and Shu, amongst a bunch of other crazy flex supports that we haven't even brought up yet? I just don't know if he has it in them to do that. He's going to have to seriously level up and play out of his mind if Genesis wants to go far. Overall, I think Genesis has some of the things that you like, but also some things that maybe scare you off from considering them to be a top team. I think they could be as high as like 3rd place if they really play well, but they could also end up really far down below, as I'm just worried this backline is not going to be able to keep up. Despite what I like about the other players, you need to be a well-rounded enough team to truly be at the highest level possible, so I am going to place Genesis right in the middle at number 5. Moving on, we have yet another very popular team from the gamer, aka FTG. This one in general has a lot to like. I'm loving the fact that Violet and Finn are back together as a backline. We've seen that they can succeed. I think Finn just needs a new, fresh breath of life as well, getting away from the shock, being something that he's more familiar and comfortable with. This is a nice change of pace. And then Alpha and Flora, we saw what they could do on Washington. They're nice with it. These two can complement each other well. Alfie in particular was arguably an MVP candidate in OWL 2023. This guy is nasty, and I think with a team like this around him, he could show some serious results for you and make those carry performances maybe not go so much to waste. Flora Alfie is flexible, they can cover a lot, Violet and Finn can do much of the same, just a solid core. And then you have Bernard join the mix as well, who showed us he's definitely still has something left in the tank with how he performed on Houston. The off-tank duties this guy has on lockdown, maybe even could like pick up a Ramatra, let's say. Lots of potential for Bernard to be a solid tank for this team. The only question mark that really arises with this team, in my honest opinion, is Belos Ria. That's the main talking point that everybody has brought up. He just wasn't that great on Soul. He's got specific strengths. We saw the Wrecking Ball and the Orisa work for him, but that makes him more so of a meta-centric kind of guy. It's dependent on the performance you'll get from him, or if he'll even play to begin with. It's good that Bernard's there to help alleviate that somewhat, but there's going to be situations where they need Belos Ria to play, and I question if he'll be able to step up. Now, in his defense, he's never played with a team like this before. He's never had a backline this strong. On his Fusion and Dynasty days, it was just absolutely nothing in comparison to Violet and Finn. But even then, it'll still be on him to really step up and play at the level of some of these dangerous tank players who are just a lot more proven. However, FTG is a lot more to like than dislike. They're versatile, they have a couple of star players which you need if you want to compete in a tournament like this. They check off a lot of the boxes. I don't want to totally tack off a bunch of points because of one player in particular when we don't know how he's going to play with an upgraded team like this. I think FTG, kind of like WAC, could be dependent on certain things, but they have a lot of upside. But I think they're maybe slightly weaker in terms of their core, so I'll be placing FTG at number 3 on the rankings. Alright, 3 more teams to go. First up is Yeti. This team, I think, packs a lot of firepower on a small roster. They're young, they're full to the brim when it comes to potential, and I could see them pulling off a couple of major upsets in this tournament if things go their way with the meta and they end up having a good day of matches. Not gonna lie, a Knife Viper DPS line could go crazy. It's another one of those weird double flex DPS duos, but it just might work. Knife and Viper have been looking for a guy like each other since last year when OWL happened, being on teams with a DPS that wasn't always reliant for them, or just a team in general. These two teaming up could mean that they could take turns with the responsibility of playing out of their goddamn minds and carrying a game. They can both play a mean Tracer. We've seen Knife, I believe, play some hit scan here and there. I could see them being very good in certain setups, but it really will depend. If we see a lot of snipers and stuff, I question how they're going to hold up, but if they get away with playing in the realm of their comfort, they could do pretty damn well. Honestly though, this principle kind of applies to the team as a whole. It'll decide how far they can go, and this definitely holds to be true for somebody like Donghack in particular. Yet again, he is going to be a solo tank that a big team relies on in a major tournament. People criticized him for how he played on Atlanta down the stretch, not being flexible enough, and that's understandable, but he's learned a lot since then. The level of play is maybe a bit smaller, and he's going to be on a team that I think probably puts a lot less pressure on him and respects him more, makes him less nervous, which could help draw a lot of his latent abilities. He learned a lot in a short time on Atlanta, and I think he'll make good use of that, especially if we see a lot of dive, which is very possible in Korea, as he is an excellent ball player, and Wrecking Ball seems like a pretty solid pick right now. And I also like Bliss and Irony too. Maybe not a world-beating backline, but Bliss, in my opinion, was kind of underrated on Dallas last year. Excellent Lucio player, and Irony has been showing some significant progress. So overall, I like Yeti. They're like a young and up-and-coming team that could make some upsets happen, but due to the small team and maybe not being the most versatile, I can't say that they're going to be a super high finisher, and I have them finishing a bit outside of that top 4 as my number 6 team. Next up, we're talking about an all-time favorite, baby, a classic. Runaway is back in action for the first time in years. Runner dusted off the old boots and said, screw it, I'm coming back to Overwatch, and the team he assembled, in my opinion, is pretty underrated. I won't sit here and pretend like they're a guaranteed title contender or anything, but they might be one of the dark horse competitors that could be in that top 4. A team of Prophet, Zest, Mag, Lee Jae-gon, and Vigilante is not bad at all. They're kind of in a similar boat to WAC, where there's some likable veterans that you can definitely rely on, but then a couple of guys that you question that are on the younger side that truly have to step up if this team wants to maximize their potential and play at the highest level possible. To break it down, I mean, Mag, Lee Jae-gon, and Zest, that's a great trio. Again, starting off just like WAC, you've got the trio down. That's your foundation. Mag and Lee Jae-gon found a lot of success on Runaway back in the day. Mag is coming off a career year as a tank player, becoming more of that hyperflex that you can rely on no matter what the situation is. Lee Jae-gon is a classic Lucio player. He should do fine there. Zest has shown that he can be one of the best playmakers in the world if given proper resources. He's had some ridiculous games in his career, and this team could enable him to do much of the same. Again though, what it ultimately comes down to is 2 young players that have to play well. Prophet and Vigilante. 2 guys that didn't find that much success in their OWL careers, but to be fair, kind of deserve another real chance at the spotlight. That's kind of the mindset I've been trying to rock with heading into these tournaments, that we gotta not think about the past and think about what these guys could do with a fresh start in mind. Prophet has played well since leaving the Seoul Dynasty. Hell, he even beat them after joining a contenders team, looking a lot better than he did before. I think part of the issue with him was that he was stuck in a Sombra meta when he's just a really good hit scan player, but then we've seen him pop off a bit in scrims as well. There's that one match where he was playing well on Echo of all things. I mean, he might be locked in, and he might be playing a lot better than we expect, and capitalizing on that potential that a lot of people were talking about just 1 year ago. However, I'm definitely not totally sold, despite being at least a little bit excited to watch him play. He's got to go out there and show some consistency. He can't be like what Zest had to deal with at times with MN3 for years, and even then, it's not like he has ever been at MN3's level. He's got big shoes to fill, and he's got a lot to prove, so I hope that he is up to the challenge. How well he does really might depend on what is being played. With Vigilante, obviously, there's reason to be concerned and to have doubts, but he's never had any real fair chances in OWL just yet. He's kind of gotten screwed over at every corner, be it because of age limitations, or being traded, being benched by an all-time great support player. There just hasn't been a lot of luck for him in his career, and I think that a fresh start might benefit him a lot, and he can show off that level of play that got people excited back when he was first about to get signed as a rookie. We know how dangerous he can be on those playmaking flex supports. We saw what he could do in the Flash Ops tournament alongside Decay and Choi Se-won and Kellen, in fact. This guy can be reliable. It is there. He just has to go out there and take it now. And let me tell you, if he can figure it out, him and Lee Jae Gon could be a pretty nasty backline. Overall, Runaway has a lot of what I like, and only a few question marks. I don't think they're in that top tier. I think they could get there if their young guys play well enough, but I'm going to put them right at the number 4 spot. Honestly, you could have them fluctuate anywhere between like 4 and maybe even 7 in my eyes, but I do like them a bit more than Genesis, as I think their backline has a lot less question marks. And finally, we have Poker Face, who I'm sliding in at the number 7 spot. And it may seem crazy to say this, but Poker Face was one of the hardest teams I had when it comes to giving them an official ranking. I put them as high as like 5 at one point and as low as 8. It's been so hard for me to truly understand them. It helps they've also had some roster changes happen. They got rid of Spectra, which is a huge blow and part of the reason I'm no longer that confident in them. But at the end of the day, I still do think they're a bit higher up than like the lowest tier. I could see them easily beating Vesta Crew, and they can certainly beat SBG, but how much further they can go, I'm not too sure. Honestly, it feels like on paper they have more versatility than a team like Yeti, in that they should be able to beat them in a long series, but the thing is, Yeti literally beat them in the tournament stage 5 to send them down to the last chance qualifier. Yeti literally beat them, so how can I sit here and say with a straight face that Poker Face is better? It feels like they should be, but there's just no way I can say that knowing the results. Looking at their roster, I like that it's deep. I like that there's a bunch of people they could rely on in a rotational basis. They've got backups at every single position, but I don't know if they have the firepower to be keeping up with the higher level teams to make that top 4 cutoff. One place I am fairly confident in them is certainly the backline. Faith, Simple, and Iris is very strong. Very, very underrated. I like what Faith showed us on Vancouver recently. Iris has been reliable for years, and Simple is somebody that you should not be sleeping on. He's been a staple of contenders for a very long time, and there's been many rumblings that he should have been an OWL. A bunch of teams had some kind of interest in him at one point or another, so someone to keep in mind if he ends up playing. That's a good support trio right there that's going to put in the work and be a very consistent aspect of this team. But where you maybe start to lack confidence is with tank and DPS. None of them are bad per se, but I don't know if there's any real stars here in the making. The only one that I suspect could be is Proud. This guy's been on the radar for a while. He is a deadly Korean DPS prospect. But with the team around him, it may not matter how much he carries, sadly. And I say that because Becky and Finale, they're just not first-level options, you know? And they feel very similar on what they bring to the table. And honestly, this is even more amplified for the tank line. Peppy and Jasmine, I've seen both of them play. They're both fine options, but compared to the other tank lines in this tournament, it feels like they're one of the weaker ones on paper, with just so much to prove right now, without much of that resume that you're looking for. So I feel pretty comfortable putting Poker Face in the end where they are at number 7. If they did have Spectra on this team, I'd be a bit more confident to maybe move them ahead of Yeti, but this is where they're going to stay for now until they show me some good performances. And that's kind of what I'm thinking for OWCS Korea in this upcoming group stage, where I think all the teams rank, and kind of how I see the rest of the tournament playing out over there as we get closer to Dallas. I believe that Falcons, WAC, FTG, and Runaway will ultimately be the top 4 in their group and move on to the next stage, while Genesis, Yeti, Poker Face, and Sin Priza play in that last chance qualifier. Disclaimer though, I don't feel that confident in this list outside of like my number 1 and number 9, maybe number 8. 2 through 7 though, it's kind of like everybody could go up or down significantly. It really will depend on a lot of factors, especially when I haven't been able to watch like any of these teams really play outside of like a random scrim leak here and there. It's going to be a lot of guesswork, as usual from me, but this is just my general feel based off of how I like these rosters on paper and how much upside they have to get to that final. Let me know how you're feeling about all this down in the comments below, and if you're hyped to watch OWCS Korea, make sure to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel for more Overwatch Champions Series content every single week. I've got another guide coming out for NA and EMEA in the future, so look out for that. Thank you all for watching, appreciate it a lot, and I'll catch you in the next one.